just about to get started. Yeah, give a couple minutes for folks to join, but we'll be starting very shortly. Thanks for tuning in this morning.
Are we ready?
Yeah, we are just about to get started. We'll give folks about a minute or two more to join. I see some folks beginning to trickle in.
Okay, so just prompt me when you're ready for me, Fritz.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I am seeing folks beginning to join right as we open the session at 9. So I'll maybe give another minute or so for folks to get in and log in. All right. I think we will go ahead and get started. I see folks continuing to trickle in, but as per any type of conference, there'll be folks coming in throughout the day, and we have a pretty packed agenda. So I want to get started. So first of all, good morning, everyone. We are joined by folks from all over, whether it's California or some of our friends from the East Coast. My name is Fritz Fu, and I work in our R&D division on outreach and engagement. And I'd like to welcome everyone to our virtual 2023 EPIC Symposium. Over the next 2 days, we'll be listening to an exciting program that has been several months in the making. And we're very excited to present to you an insightful and stacked lineup as we dive into policy discussions on clean energy innovation, and also hear about EPIC, one of our crown jewels in our R&D programs here in California, not only some of the latest technologies that are being developed, but also where the program is headed. Before I begin and start off with pass it over to the chair for opening remarks, I'd like to first go over a few virtual housekeeping items. As most of you are probably aware, as you joined this morning, the lobby of the symposium is the main landing page in your internet browser. That's where your invitation links took you this morning. From there, you'll be able to navigate to the different sessions as they start. And also, we want to note that the chat function is disabled in the actual sections, but enabled in the lobby. So there you might be able to connect and meet with folks, similar to how you might in a actual in-person conference. Whenever you go to the lobby, again, you can click through. We also have a video gallery there from some of our EPIC recipients. That'll be used later in the day for some of our video breaks, but also during our lunch hour. And as a quick note, we do, on that note, have an hour-and-a-half lunch hour break later on in the day. There will be, again, videos ready for your viewing, but also that'll be a time for folks to refresh before we do the afternoon breakout sessions. I'd also want to note that some of the sessions do have question and answer available, not all of them. And so what we plan to do is we'll take those, we'll have moderators in the Zoom Q&A and trying to funnel those to the moderator, but we'll save those really if we have time at the end. So yeah, please submit your questions, but no guarantees. Also, if you have any technical difficulty, please feel free to reach it out to the number listed on our notice. We have several folks on hand ready to shepherd you in and help troubleshoot if needed. But with that, I'm going to pass it now over to CEC Chair David Hochschild to kick off the event with some opening remarks. Here you go, Chair. Pass it over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Fritz, and good morning, friends. I'm David Hochschild, Chair of the California Energy Commission. I want to welcome all of you to the 9th Annual EPIC Symposium. The EPIC program is something all Californians should be proud of. This is really the seedbed for the clean energy and climate solutions that our state and our world so desperately need. And it's a collaborative effort between the Public Utilities Commission and the California Energy Commission. We have a group of A-list staff working to deploy $1.5 billion over the course of a decade on clean energy solutions. And it is worth remembering that our state, among other things, is really a garden bed for clean energy. The very first utility scale solar project in the world was deployed in California. The very first rooftop solar projects in the world, the very first wind projects in the world, the first electric vehicles made in our state, energy storage, and in fact, the whole field of energy efficiency began in California and has spread around the country and around the world. And that, I think, is a real point of pride. And because of the EPIC program, the continued commitment to push the envelope to make better, cheaper, more accessible, more affordable, bigger solutions, we're home to really the majority of U.S. clean tech venture capital comes into our state and is helping us scale. And it's part of the reason that our economy has been growing faster than the rest of the nation. And, you know, we have seen, I think, a really exciting story unfold here over the course of the last decade as California's economy has passed Russia, Italy, Brazil, France, the UK, and so forth. We have decarbonized, and the EPIC program has been instrumental in that. So I want to just first thank all the staff who support this program and all the stakeholders and the many, many entrepreneurs who've been a part of it for all you do to build a clean energy future together. So I just returned from a climate trip to China, a little bit jet lagged, and looking at electric vehicles, offshore wind, energy storage, a number of other issues. And it always reminds me, that the word in Chinese, the script for the word crisis, is just two other words put together: danger and opportunity, Wei Ji. And there's always opportunity inside a crisis, and that is especially true inside the climate crisis. We have an opportunity to build some powerful, healthy, dynamic, new clean energy industries in response to this climate crisis, which can provide opportunities for our state and for the next generation. And California's on the leading edge. So I want to just quickly do a sort of tour of some of the, I think, most exciting milestones that we're hitting. We are on the brink of hitting, for the first time, 2/3 of our retail electric sales coming from clean, carbon-free sources. And it is worth noting that alternative energy is the wrong word to use to describe renewables in California. Renewables are mainstream, and fossils now the alternative energy, and we're going to keep going. The law requires us to get to 90% carbon-free clean electricity by 2035. That's right around the corner. 95% by 2040, and then 100% by 2045. And we're on track to hit those targets. We're also seeing great progress in the area of transportation electrification. In the second quarter of this year, we had 25.4% of new vehicles being electric. That's up from 12% a little over a year and a half ago. Incredible growth. And we're on a path at this rate to become the first state in the country to break 50% of new vehicle sales being electric by 2026. So incredible momentum. And of course, we want everything that connects to the grid, including electric vehicles, to be a good citizen of the grid. And that's a focus of a lot of our EPIC investments, ensuring vehicle to grid can be done right, and all the rest. We're also making progress on energy efficiency and building decarbonization, building electrification. Been a major focus for the EPIC program, more efficient heat pumps and other technologies, and energy storage as well. We're funding an incredibly exciting array of next generation energy storage technologies that are going to increase energy density, increase battery life, improve battery safety. And California is leading the world in deploying energy storage. We have 250 megawatts of energy storage connected to the grid in 2019. We're over 6,000 megawatts today and expect to be at 8,000 megawatts by the end of this year. That's a 3,200% increase in energy storage in 4 years, and really driving this solution mainstream, which is good for grid, good for reliability, and it's a great facilitator of even further investments in renewables. And as we do all this, of course, we're focused on lifting up and supporting and investing in the communities that have borne the burden of pollution for far too long. And so with the EPIC program in particular, about 70% of our investments and projects in these clean energy solutions are going into low-income and disadvantaged communities. With our EV charging investments as well, we're spending about $4 billion on that alone. About half of those chargers are going into low-income and disadvantaged communities. And so this commitment really, I think it's across the state and with our sister agencies as well. But that's a really important feature of the strategy, is investing in and supporting the communities that have had to bear the greatest burdens. And especially that's true with tribes. And this is one of the things I want to highlight as a real achievement, I think, that's worth noting with the EPIC program. So California has 19% of all federally recognized Native American tribes in the United States, 110 federally recognized tribes. And we have now funded through the EPIC program 8 tribal microgrids that are providing grid reliability and clean electricity and tribal energy sovereignty. And it's something that I think we can do much more to accelerate, but really proud of the team and the partners we're working with to bring that vision to reality. We're also going upstream on things like lithium development, sustainable lithium development in the Salton Sea, the greenest way to produce lithium in the world. We have a massive lithium resource in California, and we've been funding new technologies to recover that lithium in a sustainable way. The lithium now is taxed and provides revenues and benefits to the local community. And so we're really trying to support that vision. And as we do that, to attract back manufacturing to California, we have about 50 manufacturers for batteries and for zero emission vehicles in California. We want to scale that. So once again, the EPIC program has been an incredible seed planting program to help scale these new solutions. And I just want to thank our colleagues at the Public Utilities Commission for their partnership on this terrific program. And with that, before we get into our fireside chat, I'd like to welcome Commissioner Shiroma to make a few opening remarks.
Thank you, Chair Hochschild. Good morning, everyone. I'm very honored to join you this morning in launching the Energy Commission's 2-day symposium, highlighting the important research and development work that the Energy Commission and the other EPIC administrators are conducting. We at the CPUC are deeply invested in this program's success, and I look forward to hearing, along with you, about the essential role that the Energy Commission has played in assuring investments in decarbonizing our energy system, providing for safer, more affordable, and more reliable electricity in California. Chair Hochschild provided a great overview of what's happening here in California, the vision, the wide range of investments being made, and it's something that we can all be very inspired by, very proud of. Now, since launching the program back in 2011, the CPUC has been very pleased to play a central role in assuring the success through the funding of the program. I am now the assigned commissioner to the EPIC program. This is bookended by back in 2019 at a similar symposium to this. I had the opportunity to participate on a panel to talk about microgrids. And the Energy Commission has invested through EPIC in making the success of microgrids across California. Very, very important effort. I'm committed to the long-term success. I want to, again, thank the Energy Commission for the many years of experience administering the program, for investing in assuring that California meets its goals for greenhouse gas emissions, for reducing air pollution, for increasing sustainability and reliability of our system. Several of my colleagues are participating in the two-day symposium as well, including our president, President Alice Reynolds, later on today, and our Energy Division Deputy Executive Director, Luam Tesfaye. And looking to the future, a lot of work has been done to develop the strategic objectives for this next phase of funding. The CPUC just finished up 6 workshops, all geared towards hearing from administrators, utilities, community groups, interested stakeholders. We talked about equity in research and development, as Chair Hochschild alluded to, grid modernization, distributed energy resources, and building decarbonization. The goal in all of these discussions is to identify the state's goals for the next set of investments, and again, to advance California's investment standing, the research that can be taken not only across the country, but internationally. And as we do transition, it is important to embed policies, metrics, and goals to advance equity and accessibility. At the CPUC, our Environmental Social Justice Action Plan really helps provide us a framework for advancing environmental and social justice principles in our CPUC proceedings and to support the state's equity and accessibility goals. So we have engaged with environmental and social justice communities and will continue to do so to assure that, as Chair Hochschild has outlined, that we continue to invest, to lift up, to address the wrongs of the past, and provide for that equity that we all strive for. The federal program, Justice 40, also helps to inform us. Justice 40 is a federal Biden administration initiative to invest at least 40% of the monies, contracting monies, and research monies, what have you, to benefit the low-income communities and disadvantaged communities. And we are looking to work in concert with that effort. I believe, too, that California must have a robust energy research program, not only to develop the tools for a clean, resilient, and inclusive energy economy, but I think that that type of research, that effort, what the Energy Commission is doing, it ensures that innovation remains at the heart of all of our efforts. Innovation is sure to help low-income and disadvantaged communities to have access to the latest state-of-the-art technology to reduce air pollution, to help make the progress towards the greenhouse gas reductions, and lift up where California has redlined or wronged in the past. So, and the melding of technology and that vision of equity, I think, is a beautiful, very beautiful thing. I appreciate the multi-agency and utility coordination that has focused on this work in EPIC. We have much to be proud of in EPIC's more than decade-long uh, um, existence and investment, and I want to laud the Energy Commission's essential contributions through administering the program, for organizing this conference, for really looking to not only research. Sometimes, research will show that a particular idea may fail, and we shouldn't be afraid of that. In the meantime, we are looking to invest the monies in advancing the knowledge and the tools, and to have that knowledge, those tools become mainstream. And that is really something that the Energy Commission has been working very hard at. And through the two-day conference, we'll hear of examples, the vision, the efforts that have been made over this past year and beyond, and looking ahead to the future. So I do want to congratulate the Energy Commission for that innovation and excellence. Thank you, Chair Hochschild, and to your what we call our Bagley-Keene partners, maybe your Bagley-Keene partner, Andrew McAllister, Supervisor Fritz Fu, and the CEC EPIC team. You're providing a great experience today and tomorrow for the participants, and it'll be really, really important to hear from the speakers. I also want to thank the CPUC EPIC team for steadfastly looking to assure that the funding is there and continues to be there in the coming years. Thank you so much. Very honored to be with you, and I look forward to hearing the other presentations and conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for those insightful opening remarks, Commissioner Shiroma and Chair Hochschild. I'd certainly say the partnership between the CEC and CPUC has never really been more robust, and I'm glad to see the partnership continue to flourish and push the program forward. And so now we'll head over to one of the most exciting sessions that we have planned for the symposium, a living room chat on clean energy innovation with Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis, Senator Josh Becker, representing the counties of San Mateo and Santa Clara, Southern California Edison President and CEO Stephen Powell, and Director of the Loans Program Office at DOE, Jigar Shah, who will be joining us a few moments into the living room chat. And with that, I'll pass it over to our chair, who will be moderating this session.
Great. Thank you so much, Fritz, and thank you, Commissioner Shiroma, for those opening remarks. Just a few words of acknowledgement for our terrific panel. We're joined first by Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis, who has been not just a champion for climate solutions, but really climate collaboration around the world with the bridge building she's done with so many other countries over the course of her distinguished career as an ambassador. And this is a problem that absolutely requires that. So we're so grateful for the bridge building you've done on behalf of our great state, Lieutenant Governor, and happy to have you with us. Steve Powell has been serving as president and CEO of Southern California Edison, which has been, I think, one of the most forward-thinking utilities in the nation on electrification. And happy to have you here with us, and look forward to hearing your perspective on sustaining reliability and advancing electrification and renewables. Senator Josh Becker just finished a remarkable session, which included some substantial wins on climate and clean energy. We'll ask him to share a little bit more about that. He represents the 13th Senate District in California in the Bay Area. And finally, Jigar Shah, the director of the Loan Program at U.S. Department of Energy, who I think will rename the $40 billion man, who's helping drive a lot of scale and push out really the single largest chunk of money Department of Energy has ever dealt with. So right guy for the right moment. So let's just begin with this. Senator, if I could start with you. You just finished a remarkable legislative session. What are you most excited about in the clean energy transition, and what keeps you up at night?
Well, thanks. First of all, EPIC is in my heart. Not only do I represent Silicon Valley, but as you know, when we first met, I consulted for EPA, worked on the Hill, but I also did clean energy venture and worked in the broader broadly speaking, venture ecosystem for about 20 years. So I really appreciate the work that EPIC's doing to invest in new technologies and support cutting edge R&D and electrification, which is desperately needed. I'll highlight a couple big wins, and it was a big year. Everything from starting from the top with corporate risk disclosure of emissions, not just scope 1, scope 2, but scope 3, which is the supply chain. And that's kind of been the holy grail with a phased implementation. Got that across the finish line. That was one of the talks of Climate Week when I was there in New York with some of my colleagues, as well as corporate risk disclosure. So stuff the SEC should have done 10 years ago that we've now passed here, climate risk disclosure. And then really the implementation, right? As you talked about, so many exciting developments, but ultimately we still have to keep moving faster and faster, right? Overall, we're still reducing emissions, maybe 1 to 2% a year. We need to be getting to 4 to 5% a year. And a lot of that's going to be coming in our implementation. So like transmission, for example, and passed a bill, hopefully the governor will sign soon, that'll cut about 2.5 years off the development of high capacity distribution lines, the kind of lines that we need for EV charging infrastructure, for example, where it can take up to 70 weeks to get a new charger hooked up to the grid in my territory. Another bill, which was, I've already been on a number of webinars they want to take across the country, which is a partnership between labor, the workforce training piece, the accountability piece for our utilities, but also targeted investments that, again, can reduce that backlog, get things connected to the grid faster so we can do this build out a lot faster. Existing buildings, we're doing a great job now with our new buildings, trying to make them zero energy. But what about all the existing large corporate buildings? We had a big win this year now working with the Energy Commission on what are called building performance standards, right? Doing the benchmarking of all the buildings so we know what the energy profile should be, and then getting them to them over time. And then starting some of that project build out that you talked about, and we're fortunate to have Jigar Shah here, who's led that across the country. How do we get more of that manufacturing and just projects built on the ground here? So with our next session, we'll be looking at is, again, how to keep speeding this faster on all the areas that I just talked about, but particularly with the charging infrastructure, the existing buildings with our existing emissions, and then the transmission and sort of speed to market of all of these areas. We'll be looking to move a lot faster. Those are some of the things top of mind for me.
That's great. Thank you, Senator. Let's go to you, Lieutenant Governor Kounalakis. You have done, as we talked about, an enormous amount of bridge building around the world on behalf of California. You and I were together on delegation to Japan this spring with a climate focus. What are you most excited about in the clean energy transition, and what do you foresee in terms of our engagement with the rest of the world on this issue?
Well, David, thank you so much for having me here. It's really a great privilege. Look, I'm excited about every single thing that you said in your opening remarks of what California is doing to lead the way in a clean energy transition. We are legendary in the world. Everybody knows it, and it is extremely exciting. But what is most exciting in this moment is the fact that there is so much funding to operationalize the vision. $52 billion that Governor Newsom put in from our surpluses of the last 2 years to transition to clean energy, for building infrastructure, charging stations, all of the great things we're doing legislatively, by the way, that Josh Becker said that require funding, the tax credit program, the grant program, EPIC's programs. But what I'm really excited right now is to hear from the energy gang leader, the legendary work that Jigar Shah is now engaged in, a $400 billion loan program that President Biden established with the IRA. Here we go, a swaggering, can you see it? Clean energy pioneer with $400 billion to hand out. Jigar Shah, it's such a thrill to be on this with you. And I know that of the almost 400 people watching, a lot of people are here to hear how entrepreneurs in California, how the business sector in California, I have an MBA, 18 years in the private sector, business people, plus the private capital coming into California to leverage up the loan program that you're running. That is what I'm most excited about right now.
Well said. We'll go to Jigar in a minute. I do want to just give tribute to Jigar and others who have entered public service now and left, much higher salaries in the private sector to come do this work. There has never been a more important time to be a part of public service and make government work and make the great implementation that we're in right now a success. So thank you, Jigar, for that. And we'll get to you in a second. I wanted to first go, if we could, to Steve. Your perspective running one of the largest utilities in the United States, Southern California Edison. What are you most excited about, and what keeps you up at night as we think about this clean energy transition?
Yeah, so really appreciate the time being here and sharing the stage with everybody here. I'm excited about the progress that we've already made. Like, we just recently we released a paper called Countdown to 2045, where we're giving our Edison's latest perspective on what the state will need to do to achieve its net zero carbon goals. But when we put our first paper out back in 2019, we were in a very different place. I think the state planning processes weren't really synced up at that point. The assumptions and what you saw coming from the CEC didn't always flow all the way through the PUC and the CAISO. That stuff is synced up, and we can begin to plan what actually needs to happen now. We probably had maybe 5% of vehicle sales being electric back then. We're over a quarter of new vehicle sales being electric. You look at everything that we've done over the last 4 or 5 years as a state to get to this point, and it shows how much we can move and how quickly we can move. We have to move even faster. So what our paper says is, look, by the time you get to 2045, 90% of vehicles need to be electrified, 95% of buildings electrified. The amount of energy storage that will need to be on the system, more than 30 gigawatts. But we're making progress. You mentioned earlier, we've already got 6,000 megawatts on the grid of energy storage. So it's that combination of progress, but then the excitement of the challenges that face us ahead. And Josh was just talking about this last legislative session, getting bills in place that actually create the path for us to get transmission built. That's exciting that we're not just talking about it, but we're making those changes. And there is a lot more to do. But I'm excited going on the venture with everybody, because it's not one company, one entity. Everybody has to be in on this for it to work. And you see all the pieces coming together. We've just got to really accelerate.
Great, thank you. All right, well, Jigar Shah, the man, the myth, the legend, give us the update from DC. What are you most excited about? What are the challenges that are top of mind for you at this point?
Well, David, thank you for having me, and thank you, Lieutenant Governor, for your kind words. I think California has clearly led the way in innovation for decades, and EPIC has played a big role in making that happen. I think that today, the moment has come for us to lead the way in deployment. And I think you were a critical part of the California Solar Initiative back in 2007, where I think we showed the world that we could actually make solar cost effective for 1/20th the cost of Germany, right? And so I think when you think about not just the entrepreneurs and the leadership on the technology side, but also leadership on the policy side, frankly, in making sure that we're leading the way with next generation policies that can be copied across the world. Today, California has over 1.5 million households with solar on them, which is amazing. And we are now starting to use the batteries that are in people's homes to help manage the grid day-to-day in the virtual power plants that we're deploying. And I think when you think about the work that we're doing at the Department of Energy, is we're putting really a bow around how that comes together. I think it has always been the case that we need a lot more generation in this country, right? I mean, folks want their ChatGPT and they want all the things that present a modern lifestyle. We need a lot more grid infrastructure, and California has led the way on the new planning process that California ISO and others have been putting in place. But we now need to be able to flex demand with the same level of dexterity that we can currently only flex supply, right? And we need to get the electric utility companies to take that seriously. And Southern California Edison, frankly, has led the way with a lot of pilots with STEM and Advanced Microgrid and other great companies from California. But now we need to do it not at pilot scale, but at state scale, right? And I think that is something that we can do today. We are proud that last week we closed on a $3 billion loan guarantee for Sunnova Hestia, which is the first time that the Department of Energy has done that at scale with distributed generation. Before that, we really only did one large solar project or one large wind project or one large geothermal project. The project that we announced last week that we closed on was over 75,000 small systems aggregated up into roughly a $4 billion portfolio that we're providing a $3 billion guarantee on. And, I think what's so exciting, as the Lieutenant Governor suggested, is that we've got $52 billion of resources that are being put out the door by the governor. And that basically allows us to match with our $400 billion without the innovation requirement, right? So when the state actually supports a project, that then allows us to provide money to be able to do the scale up without meeting the innovation requirements that we have, right? But it has to be done intentionally, right? As you know, the federal government is full of rules and statutes. And so we have to actually, go through and meet those rules and statutes deliberately. But what that allows us to do is actually meet the moment and, make sure that we're not leaving the low moderate income communities behind when we switch to heat pumps, when we figure out how to do heat pump water heaters, when we make sure that we have solar on the rest of households, right? We have 66,000 warehouses in the state of California that can also put solar plus battery storage on it, right? But also when you think about the move to heavy duty and medium duty trucks, right? I mean, CARB has extraordinary programs around supporting that transition, not just the mandate, but also grant programs. We can match those programs 1 to 20 so that, the small businesses who are cleaning linens, right? Or the small businesses that have rental car shuttles, or the small businesses that have all sorts of vehicles that also want to participate and move to heavy duty and medium duty electric solutions also can go first. It's not just the large corporations like PepsiCo and others who frankly have done extraordinary work piloting the Tesla Semi and other vehicles, but there's a lot of small and medium-sized businesses that want to get in on this action. And I think we now have the tools by which to take all this technology that, frankly, California has led the way on for decades and actually get into the deploy framework. The last thing I'd say here is that, we assembled over 300 companies last week here in DC for the first Deploy 23 conference. And, we had the secretary give remarks, of course, but also Mitch Landrieu, who runs the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, and John Podesta, who runs the Inflation Reduction Act. And I think what we all noticed was that we assume that the private sector actually knows how to do this and how to meet this moment. And they actually don't, right? They know how to announce a big deal. But that last piece around getting the final permits in place, getting the final, NEPA or CEQA in place, right? Getting that last piece in place is confusing for them as much as it is for us, right? And we spent 2 days having that conversation in a very vulnerable way, right? Where people put their cards on the table and said, we did make this announcement around clean steel or clean cement, or we made this announcement around a next generation battery manufacturing facility or critical minerals. But honestly, we don't know how to finish this last part of the checklist, right? And we brought over 80 DOE officials, but also 5 different government agencies, from the Department of Defense to Department of Interior to Department of Commerce and others, and basically said, let's figure this out together, right? We are doing big things in this country. We are no longer the nation of invention, the state of invention, which then allows our companies to go to other continents to commercialize that technology. That commercialization is going to happen here in the United States, here in the state of California. And we need to all admit to ourselves that we haven't done this at scale for 30 years, right? So we need to talk to each other, be honest with each other about the fact that we need to put these pieces in place, and everyone's doing things for the right reasons, but we need to do it faster, more efficiently at scale. And our dollars at the Loan Programs Office gives us a seat at the table by which to not only provide those dollars, but also to make sure that the experience that the companies who use our dollars is having is an efficient one throughout the United States government.
It's a great point, Jigar. And I'm struck, and look at sort of what's happening now. There are these, remarkable milestones. We just, for example, had this news a few weeks ago that broke that for the first time anywhere in the United States, an electric car has now become the best-selling car in California. Tesla surpassed Toyota. Best-selling car in the state is now electric. That's a huge milestone, right? But then getting all the utility make-readies done to be able to do the charging is going really slowly still. And so a lot of need on the deployment. I really appreciate your focus on that. It kind of leads to my next question, which is really around the greatest areas of need for innovation and investment. I want to highlight in asking that not just technology innovation, but process innovation. So just the Energy Commission as an example, the governor gave us $20 million with the legislature a year or two ago for this solar app, which we're calling CalApp, which is basically just permit innovation to take a process which in some cases takes 60 days to get a permit for residential storage of solar and make it a over-the-counter one day online.
Bill Maher reminds us of that on every episode, I think, of
exactly. So that money has now been pushed out to 300 different counties and cities in the state, and we have one day processing, and that's a fairly simple program. And where else can we replicate? What are the areas of need? Just big picture, when all of you think about priorities for innovation investment for the EPIC program and other investments we make, what's at the top of your list?
Did you want me to go first, or?
Go ahead. Yeah, sure. And then Steve, how about?
Yeah, I think that when you think about this business model innovation that we're thinking about, a lot of it's around figuring out how to think big again, right? I'll give you an example. So, Southern California Edison's been leading the way on thinking about resiliency issues with Santa Barbara, right? Santa Barbara, as everybody knows, is connected with only one distribution line, right? And so if there's a public safety shutoff, you'd have to basically, turn off all of Santa Barbara. And so Santa Barbara wants to have a resilient solution. They want to figure out how to make sure they can stay open if, there's a public safety shutoff, right? And I think when you think about all of the technologies coming together around building electrification, around putting solar on a lot of those rooftops, around figuring out how you actually use next generation microgrid technology, right? All together, one of the challenges that we have is how do you have this conversation, right? When a local community decides that it wants its multifamily housing to be electrified, it wants to make sure that it has these resiliency solutions, et cetera, the question becomes, who do you get permission from? Who do you call in Southern California Edison to have this conversation? Is it rate-based, right? Like, do you work within the Public Service Commission to rate-base it? Or is it the city of Santa Barbara that does this work with permission from Southern California Edison, right? And once you have all that feature, right, how do you use those features to get paid every single day, right? Because you have a duck curve in California. And so once you have this microgrid in place, that microgrid can actually serve to solve the problems every day in addition to being an emergency situation when things occur, right? And so how do you call upon these things? We've had demand response programs, for instance, for years, right? But they're only paying people in an emergency situation. How do you pay people every day to provide the same services that a natural gas peaker plant plays today, today? But those peaker plants are in low-income neighborhoods providing pollution to those local neighborhoods. How do you make sure that a more resilient piece has a place to play, right? So I think CalApp and SolarApp is a critical piece of this. But the other piece of it is that every single electric vehicle being sold today, right, has a battery that's 5 times to 8 times larger than your power wall that's in your house, right? So how do you make that a grid resource, right? As opposed to being this thing where we're like, no, all this load is being added to the grid. This is causing a problem. How do you actually make it part of the solution? And how do you pay those people to do that? When you think about what happened in Texas during the heat dome, There were people on the Tesla Electric system that got a negative $600 bill because they were able to use their car and their power walls to be able to like actually support the grid, right, during that heat dome every day, right? And so I think we have all of this extraordinary technology that people have already opted into that are not being able to fully benefit from the economics of, getting paid $2 a kilowatt hour for, a backup generator or something that's participating. And so the goal, I think, is to start making this more seamless and making the state of California a place where innovation thrives on the deployment side.
Yeah, well said. Steve, let's go to you.
Yeah, thanks. Maybe I can jump in and pick up where you left off, Jigar, but maybe where you started as well. I think the idea of getting microgrids, and I'll call it just loosely microgrids or virtual power plants or whatever it is to leverage distributed resources, having the technology control it and optimize it effectively is a real area of need, and it has to be paired. You're right, with the business model. What are the value streams? Who can capture them? And when we create those, how do we not create new inequities in the system, right? So we've got to make sure that you can create the value streams, people can capture it, but you also don't want it to be on the backs of folks that shouldn't be paying for it or maybe can't afford it. So there's a lot of innovation that has to happen there. I think thinking about the applications for microgrids or VPPs is really important as well. Santa Barbara is a unique situation. You mentioned it's a one transmission corridor with a few lines that go in there. Generally, it's not going to be a public safety power shutoff that's going to shut it down. But if you have issues on those transmission lines, you do have relatively few options to continue to serve that load. So continue to look for new technologies and controls like a microgrid that can enable it will be really important. I go back to there's still technology investment that needs to happen around. I mean, long duration energy storage is a great example. I think longer term, some of those like clean firm technologies, how are you going to get things like carbon capture and sequestration, or in the right places, new nuclear, to be part of that mix? Those are longer term ones. In the nearer term, before you even get to that, I go back to a lot of what Senator Becker's been doing and helping with is how do you get the planning and the siting and licensing processes? What innovation can be done there? We're taking bites at the problem, but there's a lot more to do, right? You've got things you have to do at the state level. You have things you have to do across multiple agencies. You got to clean up that. You've then got to go down to the local level and manage. How do you handle the permitting? Are there ways to streamline and really consolidate that permitting at the local level? Because you think about building a big transmission line, you go through a lot of different jurisdictions for a major transmission line. And any one of those can be a hang up and get in the way. And so you've got to get the right alignment from top to bottom in the state all the way down on how we're going to go tackle those, because you can build all the big solar plants or offshore wind or, you name the large infrastructure. If you can't move the electrons around, it's kind of all for naught. And so that's where I think a lot of the thinking innovation needs to go into is how do we grease the skids for all the deploy stuff that Jigar's saying needs to happen? Because we agree, when you look at the amount of infrastructure, when we look out in the 2030s, we think we may need to be building 4 times more distribution circuits than we're building today, 10 times more transmission lines in the state. We think we'll have to double the number of line miles of transmission in the state. That is a huge amount of infrastructure that, as Jigar mentioned, we haven't done in the last 3 decades here. So there'll be plenty of innovation on, I'll say, the greasing of the skids there, all the way to supply chain.
Well said. Senator Becker?
Yeah, well, I'll pick up where both of you left off. And I think that, again, the big picture here is we keep thinking, how do we do this with reliability and then also confidence? Because the question I get, people say, hey, I'm going to electrify my house. How do we know the grid's going to be there? Or I'm going to get this electric vehicle. How do we know the grid's going to be there? And that's what we have been doing here. So I had a bill last year on transmission to encourage better collaboration between our parts of government, our PUC and our CAISO. And partly because of that, but they're on their own accord, CAISO approved 45 new transmission projects this year. This is $7.5 billion in investment for 45 new transmission projects. So that's the kind of work we need to do. As you meant, speeding up permitting for new generation and transmission, supporting offshore wind and geothermal, like we did this year with our central procurement. This was a 6-year effort to get central procurement improved, and we did it this year so that we can complement are onshore wind and solar. Again, offshore wind, because it's that perfect inversely correlated with onshore wind and with solar, enabling community solar, which we have not done a good job of in California, enabling community solar with storage that can get interconnected faster because it's relatively small projects connected to the distribution grid. Those are some of the things that, again, we've made progress and we need to continue working on this year. I mentioned existing buildings because the benchmarking data shows the least efficient 20% of older commercial and multifamily buildings could cut energy use 50% if they were doing what the top percentile of buildings were doing from an efficiency perspective. And all this adds up to a massive amount of jobs. And that's why we've gotten labor to support a lot of these initiatives. Again, as long as we can make sure that these are going to be good jobs. But those have been part of a lot of these bills here to do that. The last part I'll mention is demand flexibility. Since we talked about virtual power plants and we're getting into the details a little bit, this is an area that does not depend on new transmission and slower permitting processes. And we've done, in some cases, the devices are there with smart thermostats and water heaters. And I know we've invested in the last couple of years, but I continue to be concerned that we have a lot of barriers that prevent third-party demand response aggregators from competing to provide that kind of demand flexibility. So I think we need to continue to do more there to open up to make sure that we have that playing field, because that's going to be an important part going forward. We had to rely as a state with recently we re-upped with some very dirty plants over, I think, $1 billion for some dirty plants just to make sure that reliability is there. Well, we need to make sure that with all the investments now that we're doing in storage and with the infrastructure and transmission to get energy where it needs to be, that we don't need to do that going forward. So again, some of the big pieces that we have done, and then more to go. But Jigar, just so you know, this piece that we did of aligning the workforce training with the target investments, with the accountability, is a model that all the charging companies now want to take nationally, and really excited about that.
Super impressive.
Lieutenant Governor, any thoughts on your side on this?
Well, yeah, I think what we're really hearing, to sum it up in one word, is scale. We are now at a point where it's really all about scale. And the Steve, to your point about adding those transmission lines and doing more because we haven't kept up with the build out of the grid. I have heard estimates that we will need the size and the capacity of the California grid by the time we get to our 2045 goals will need to be 2 to 3 times the capacity and the size of what it is now. And it probably is not going to be adding on. So it's a moment where we need vision, real vision, as we work toward the 2045 goals. And let me just say to you, David, because the California Energy Commission is so central to helping provide this vision. But maybe I can just dive in, though, on one thing that Senator Becker mentioned, which is offshore wind. So I'm the chair of the California State Lands Commission, and we are really working hard on the offshore wind issue. I'm very proud to have co-sponsored the legislation several years ago to kind of kick off this effort. But spending time with the lessees and with those who are going to be responsible for building this infrastructure, this is a massive challenge. We have a goal of 5 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030. That's the end of this decade. There's only 0.5 gigawatt of floating offshore wind collectively around the world. So we know this is proven technology. We know we can do it. And we know certainly that some of the work that Senator Becker is doing on procurement and other ways to make sure that we get there. But it is still a very serious and important effort that we're going to have to really redouble our efforts to be able to get there in time. And I'll also tell you, because Jennifer Granholm is a very good friend of mine, and for those who don't know, even though she's best known as having been the governor of Michigan, she was living here in California for many years before going back to be the Secretary of Energy. And I went and saw her right after the COVID restrictions lifted. And the first thing she said to me is, we have to keep our nuclear power plants online longer in order to be able to make sure that we're bridging the gap to get to where we want to go. So to me, and what I'm hearing from everybody here and to everybody who's signed on today, it's about scale. And to get to scale, it requires the vision. It requires massive government investment, which we are seeing right now. Jigar Shah, through the grant program that President Biden has handed off to Senator Grant, or to Secretary Granholm and you, the incredible wraparound efforts here in California to get us there. But it is also going to require the innovative efforts of the private sector as well to help us get to where we want to go.
I wanted to build on some points a number of you made about reliability as part of this, because that is clearly essential if we want to electrify almost everything, including transportation, the building sector, and rail. You know, people need to have full confidence in the electric grid. And in some ways, you know, climate change is making it harder to fight climate change. When you have high heat events, imports to California go down because our surrounding neighbor states are using more power. The drought, when we had a severe drought the last few years, it had reduced hydro. We had wildfire smoke damaging transmission lines, and in some cases reducing solar production. All these things conspired, you know, along with high heat, increasing electric demand in the state. And, you know, we got through this summer without an outage, but it's a challenge we're going to be with for a while. And I wonder, Steve, if you could comment a little bit on priorities for grid reliability and how we've been able to succeed so far in supporting reliability. Any themes that you want to highlight there?
Yeah, so appreciate it. A couple. Maybe first, let's start with wildfire, right? Because that not only did it, you know, obviously impact our communities and creates a lot of public safety risk around our communities. Part of the reaction was to create public safety power shutoffs as our tool of last resort. But over the last 4 years, from all of the grid hardening work that we've done, as well as getting a lot, you know, better situational awareness, better targeting of how we go about it, we use PSPS 95% less than we did 4 and 5 years ago. And so when you put the problem in front of us, we will figure out how to solve it. It doesn't happen overnight, but that's a reliability improvement for customers, especially in those communities. And we've got more that we can do. You mentioned this summer, and, you know, the last time we had the rotating outages in California was now 3 summers ago, and a lot of work's been done over the last couple of years. So as you mentioned, 6,000 megawatts of energy storage is a big piece. Continuing to ramp up the amount of customer demand response. So in California, Edison already has about 1,000 megawatts of demand response from legacy programs over the years, but now layering in new virtual power plant programs, tapping into Tesla Powerwalls. You know, just leveraging that, that's a growing portion of those programs. The state had to really increase the incentives to keep customers in those programs because we would be using them more than we've used them in the past. So customer demand response has been a big piece. Energy storage has been a big piece. Frankly, just regional coordination. And so the work that CAISO has done to leverage its EIM market so that we can get better visibility and information and electron flow across the Western Connect has been another big piece. You layer those on with better coordination across all the entities in the state, and that's what allows us to get through summers like we've had this summer and the last couple without those rotating outages. As you look forward, loads are growing really quickly. EVs are showing up all over the place. Other states are seeing record heat and record demands. The peak for the whole WEC this summer, if California was at its peak, we would have had new peaks in the entire WEC. And so we've got to make sure that we have broader regional coordination of both planning as well as how we manage the grid. So those will be important on top of all the infrastructure build out we've talked about. You know, we know we need a lot more generation. We're going to need a lot more wires to move it all around. But we've shown over the last couple of years that put the problems in front of us and collectively, you know, an industry plus the government involvement, we can move pretty quickly.
Great. Well, let's just close with a quick lightning round of any closing thoughts. And I just wanted to note, I think, what is apparent to everybody watching this, the talent and dedication and professionalism that we have in our state and with our partners at DOE on these issues is inspiring, and it's certainly something that keeps me going, this work, having such amazing partners to work on all these significant challenges with. With the clean energy future, I think we know in California our role, if we can make it happen here, it will spread. We've seen that. I'm mindful that probably the biggest pro-coal president we've ever had in Donald Trump, coal power shrunk as a percentage of our grid portfolio during the Trump administration, and it actually shrunk even more than it had under Obama, and that's because renewables were cheaper and had gotten to scale, and the role that California played making that happen is exciting, and to think about that, the next steps on electric vehicles and all the rest. So any closing thoughts about California's role and next steps on the clean energy future? And why don't we just do a lightning round, maybe starting with Lieutenant Governor Kounalakis?
Let me just go back to what I said at the very beginning, because I think for everybody here, we know what California is doing. We know the history here. We know how seriously we take the transition to a carbon-free energy future and how invested we are in it. And by the way, the governor is on his way. David, you're going with him to China in a couple of weeks. California is leading the way internationally on this transition. By the way, we're also hosting the APEC Summit here in San Francisco in a couple of weeks. Sustainability is the theme of it, and 20 world leaders are coming here to meet with President Biden. All of this is very important in demonstrating our intentionality. But what is different right now is this IRA funding. There has never been a financial investment of this kind. And that's why I'm like fangirling on Jigar Shah being here. And I think a lot of people signed up, really, Jigar, to see you and to hear from you, because $400 billion in loan programs is really, this is a new day. So I encourage everybody to look, who's on here today, to look into the programs that exist, the state programs, of course, but also the loan programs coming out of the Department of Energy, because that, to me, is why we really are in a special moment of opportunity to have that kind of massive federal funding, which California is better poised, and Californians are better poised than any other part of the country to leverage that IRA loan program into getting us where we want to go with our vision for a clean energy future.
You're very kind.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, Jigar, over to you.
I think you're absolutely right that California is better poised than any other state in the country to take advantage of this. And it requires a bunch of steps to be taken. We got $13.2 billion of new loan requests that came in last month, mostly from electric utilities. We need to figure out how to get all the electric utilities on board to use the 1706 program that we have. It's $250 billion in there, so we got to get that done. The same thing's true with virtual power plants. I think that we've got to get, we're already working very closely with the California Energy Commission, with you, David, but also with Strategic Growth Council and the California Resources Board and the iBank to just make sure that we're following the steps that allows us to unlock funding for the Salton Sea, funding for the offshore wind deployment. Californians buy about $1 billion a month of solar plus storage, new appliances, electric vehicles, and we've got to get all of those to line up with this virtual power plant vision that Southern California Edison has just laid out, that's essential, frankly, to their decarbonization plan by 2045 that Pedro has laid out very eloquently. But I also think that, when you think about commercial and industrial rooftops, we could build, probably something on the order of 10 gigawatts of new solar on rooftops over the next 4 years if we actually put our mind to it and got the tariffs lined up properly at the Public Service Commission, et cetera, right? And so I think, as you're suggesting, David, I think this blocking and tackling is what we have to do next. And as Lieutenant Governor suggested and Senator Becker suggested, California is better poised, frankly, than any other state in the country to really achieve the scale that this moment requires.
All right, let's go to Senator Becker, and then Steve can close us out.
Great. I'd say three things. Build clean faster. One of the key things, I think, from this conversation, Two, we've got to do the tough stuff, the transmission, hard to decarbonize industries, cement, agriculture, the tough industries we need to focus on. And then thirdly, demand signals, right? We're sending the demand signal, then entrepreneurs will respond. And this is why the EPIC program is so important at the end of the day, is to be doing that next generation of R&D. We see that when we send a demand signal for buildings, we see new technologies. Window-mounted heat pumps have come up, window treatments to improve insulation, building-level carbon capture systems. When we send the market signals, switches in the home, so we don't have to upgrade the panel for every new home electrification. When we send the demand signals, the private sector will respond. But EPIC is an important part of that R&D technology going forward. We have to continue to be the innovation engine along with the implementation engine.
All right, and I'll pick it up from there. So as Edison's countdown paper points out, electrification is core to any of this. And so everything we can do to accelerate electrification is key. And so transportation's moving, we got to get the building electrification moving, at the same pace. And so there's a big piece of work there. But underneath all of that, you've got to have the grid and making sure that the investments can be done, that we can scale. We've got the workforce, the supply chain, and that we can get that work through. That'll be critical to meet the state's decarbonization goals. And I would add that it's not just about decarbonization. When you get to the end of this and look at 2045, as you take more and more fossil fuels out of the system, you're not using gasoline in vehicles, you're not using natural gas as much in many appliances, but you're using much more efficient electricity, customers will benefit. Total energy costs for customers will come down. We estimate in California it can be 1/3 to 40%. But we've got to bridge through this period to get there. And so it's a good payoff, not just from a sustainability perspective, but it will be for customers as well.
Well said. Well, on behalf of the Energy Commission and the EPIC program, thank you all for a terrific panel. And Madam Lieutenant Governor, in addition to your day job, thank you for serving as chair of the Jigar Shah Fan Club. We're all members of that club. And Jigar, we're rooting for you to get all that money out as quickly as possible. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, Chair, Lieutenant Governor, President Powell, Senator Becker, Director Shah, thank you so much for that inspiring and insightful conversation. It really is great to see the partnership between the utilities, state and federal government as we dive into these new technologies. And I think the key word is right, it's scale. And that's certainly where our EPIC program is helping to promote our technologies at scale. So we had originally planned for a 10-minute video run, but in line of fact, this has ran over a little bit. We'll just go to a little break. We'll be resuming at 10:10 in about 5 minutes. So see you all shortly. We'll have a plenary with an update on our entrepreneurial ecosystem. See you all in about 5 minutes. Thanks, everyone.